Oh, you're gonna come up and say, "Oh, right, okay." She won't do this for the interview, but she's kind
Oh,
of.
that's okay. Dogs are always welcome.
Oh, you're being princess needy at the minute, aren't you? Okay. I got two of them. I've got like a 7 month old, and then Poppy there, the sort of black and tan cocker spaniel, who's 3 in October, but she is super super needy, and because it's coming up, well, 5:30. My partner should be home soon, so they'll be getting their dinner soon. But they're kind of doing that. If I just sit and look at you, you give me my tea a little bit.
All right. Well, this is the Big Friendly Swim podcast. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
No worries.
For those who might not know you, could you walk through your career and like your time in the sport of swimming and just basically just introduce yourself?
Cool. So my name is Hannah Miley. I'm actually a recent retired Olympic athlete. I'm 33 years of age. Started swimming when I was about 3. It was my dad that first chucked me in a pool, taught me to swim. And it just kind of progressed from there. I did lots of other activities and sports, but just found swimming was home. I had such a vivid imagination as a kid, and I just loved being like pretending I was a mermaid or a dolphin or flying. It just brought a lot of creativity out for me, and I loved being just that little bit different. So for me, being the only kid that was turning up to school in the morning with wet hair, and if everybody would go right, I would purposely go left. Some people may say that's being awkward, but for me, I just prided myself in being just that little bit different. And 5'5". I'm not a big athlete, and I never have been a big swimmer. Even just trying to put muscle mass on was always really challenging for me. So, my dad's philosophy and his background and heritage is Irish. So he always taught me, be the last man standing. So it was always be at the pool first and be the last to come out the pool. Always just go that little extra mile and think of, what would your competitors be doing. So that mentality, I think, helped me push through to basically get the career that I got. Ended up making the Commonwealth Games team for Team Scotland when I was 16. And then made my first Olympic team when I was just before my 19th birthday in 2008 for Beijing. And just every time I got to an international major competition, it pretty much just inspired me to be like, right, okay, I've done that. Let's go for the next one. Let's try it again. And I was always wanting to come back, no matter whether I did well or not well. I always strive to be like, well, let's try it again and again and again, and just keep going for as long as I could. And I loved being unassuming. As I said, I was only 5'5", so I'm quite diminutive in height. So for me, it was almost like being a Jack Russell, just being that relentless, annoying little thing always there. And there were some advantages, being quite a small athlete. I could recover pretty quick. I found that, okay, maybe my power was not as good and I always got killed off the start, but I'd make up for it in other areas by, working on my endurance and my free swimming speed. And the majority of my career was done in a 4-lane, 25-meter pool. The nearest long course facility for me was like 2.5, 3 hours away. So, I had to fight a lot to get where I wanted to be. And my dad my dad was my coach as well. And he wasn't a full-time coach. He was a helicopter pilot. That was his main job. He was a volunteer coach. So he was, up in the air, flying over the North Sea, creating my training sessions. And then he would text them to me, or before he would go to the airport, he would write them out in his logbook and I would copy it out and take it to the pool. So, we had quite a good partnership, and it was neither of us were on our own on the journey. We were always there together. So that, I think, really helped sort of lift each other up, especially through the really tough times within it. So yeah, apologies. That was a very long-winded answer. And
Oh
I
no,
could
that's
go on.
definitely okay. Like you can go on as much as you want. I appreciate like you're like very in depth and very detailed. So for me at least, it's always been the most interesting to watch the athletes who have a lot of longevity. Like the first person that comes to mind is from Japan. I'm gonna butcher his name, but Irie he's a backstroke swimmer, and he's been in almost every major 200 backstroke final at Worlds or the Olympic Games since like 2007.
Rizukiri,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So you went to 3 straight Olympics and
Yeah.
made 3 straight Olympic finals in the same event, and then added 2 Olympic finals in the 4x200 free relay and the 200 IM.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you can walk me through those 3 Olympics and like the emotions and the experiences that came with like all 5 of your Olympic final appearances. I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
Yeah, it's very much a loaded question, but it's really interesting actually, especially to be asked about the emotion of it. Because each one came with a lot of life lessons and a lot of experience as well. And there were things that I would take away from those Olympics and apply it to my next season of training, and to then be like, right, I want to target the next games and the next games. So for me, I remember somebody pretty much put it very frank and very blunt about what it was like being at an Olympics. Because initially I thought, freebies, you get free kit, you got little things. I thought, this is awesome. Coming from a little northeast of Scotland town, this was a very big deal for me. And, to come away with like 3 suitcases full of kit was just, so cool. It was pretty much what my full wardrobe was made out of. So going out to Beijing was really cool. We were given a lot of advice on how to cope with evening heats, morning finals. Our Olympic trials were set around that. So we had to qualify by getting a set time in the heats and then coming top 2 in the final. So I was able to achieve that. That's how I got on the team. So I knew, okay, I know how to swim fast in the evening and then being able to back it up for the final. And I remember walking out on pool deck when we arrived in Beijing, going into the water tube. And there was a mix of like anticipation, excitement, and then slight disappointment as well. And the only reason I felt slightly disappointed was I walked on poolside and it was like, well, this is slightly no different to like nationals. It's still a 10-lane 50-meter pool. I don't know why I thought it was going to be any different. I've been watching it on TV. I knew it was a 10-lane 50-meter pool, but I thought I'm going to be hit with this like awe-inspiring. It's going to feel massive. And then it was like, oh, no, it's not. It's actually just another 10-lane 50-meter pool. So it was actually quite refreshing seeing that, because I think it then put into reality that, the Olympics is such a big event, but the main principle of it is no different to any other competitions that you've done. You were the amount of times that I'd raced the 400 IM, it made it no different. So that was kind of a nice little bit of mindset. And I remember one of the athletes, now I'm probably going to butcher the Yorkshire accent of the athlete, but they walked up and they're like, oh, hey up, it's a right big gala this, basically saying, oh, it's just a big competition. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty true actually. So going through the heats, it was quite nerve-wracking because I did feel a little bit like a rabbit caught in headlights, because all of a sudden you realize and experience the size of the crowd. You don't notice how big the crowd is until the seats are filled. And then going into the finals as well, you kind of have this sense of anticipation, a little bit of excitement and pressure, because you don't know what the expectation is. You've made the final. You are now within the top 8 in the world's best at that moment in time. And it's, it's a pretty special thing to be part of. But at the same time, you don't want to mess it up. You want to prove your point. And I remember finishing and I came 6th, and I did feel a bit disappointed. I knew that there was more in there and I hadn't met, I think, my own expectations. So I came away from Beijing feeling a little bit unfulfilled and a little bit like it just wasn't quite the experience that I wanted and what I'd hoped for. So I got back into training for the next 4-year cycle, because the next one was going to be in London. And for me, it was, I want to be at a home games. Not many athletes get to experience being at a home games. So for me, it was like, right, this is a big target for me. And there's going to be a lot of expectation. It's going to be probably quite tough to make the team. So I'm going to have to go above and beyond to try and make this team. So the couple of years leading into it were pretty good. I was starting to progress and sort of solidify myself in the senior ranks, and feel a bit more comfortable in my style of swimming in 400 IM. And then I raced at the Olympic trials at our home Olympic pool in London. And it was phenomenal. It was probably one of the best swims I'd ever done. I felt like a huge boost in confidence in like, okay, I can do this. This is really, really good. And I'll never forget walking out for both the heat and the final of my 400 IM in London, and just how deafening the crowd was. Like, I had headphones in. I always have my headphones in. I'm always focused and listen to the songs. But there was no point, no matter how loud you made it, it just didn't work. You just, yeah, you could hear the noise, and it was quite intimidating, but also quite exciting at the same time. And it was trying to stay on that fine balance of making sure it didn't become too intimidating, and you just, reveled in the excitement and used it to help boost you. But it really is a bit of a thin tightrope, I think, with athletes, because you can take that excitement and energy from the crowd, and it can be perceived as super pressure on your shoulders, which can affect your performance. So I swam a really good swim. I came fifth, and again, I was a little bit disappointed. And actually, just before the final, after the heats I'd done, some British interviewers basically said, "Oh, Mark Cavendish, who is one of our top cyclists, he's going to be our first shot at gold. If he doesn't win gold, it's all going to be eyes on you, Hannah." And I'm like, thanks. Okay, well, winning a medal is great, but for me, I'm not the type of person that's like, yeah, I'm going to win this gold medal, or I'm not as bolshy as that. I'm a little bit more, I'm quite quietly get on with things. I'd rather let the actions do the talking, sort of thing, rather than make a shout out about it. So even though I've grown up being a little bit different, always turning left when everyone turned right, I'm still a little bit quietly reserved as well. So for me, I was like, well, I'd love to win gold and I'd love to be on the podium, but if I shout out about it and it doesn't happen, British media is going to absolutely slaughter me. So I'm not going to set myself up for that. So it was kind of, just making sure that it was a little bit like, yeah, fine, appreciate that. That's a great observation. I don't care. I just want the race. So coming away with fifth, and then Yeshi Wen doing that phenomenal last 100 meters as she did, it was hard, because I think I felt the expectation of, if you're a British athlete, you have to come away with a medal. So by not achieving that, it kind of tarnished a little bit of the experience that I had, because I felt I'd let people down. I felt I'd let the public down. I'd let myself down. And the time that I'd done at the British Championships would have put me in contention for a medal. So it's like, well, why didn't I do that performance then? So, it was one of those kind of experiences of being like, you got to swim in the right pool. And for me, I think I'd swum the right swim at the wrong time. It was the right swim in the right pool just in March rather than in, the summertime. So it was kind of like, right, okay, I kind of need to maybe look at trying to, sort this out. We have a lot of pressure in trying to make the team sort of around the spring, and then backing it up again in the summer. Whereas I know in the American system, it's, quite close to do it in the summer, and then again, be able to back it up in the, the summer champs after that. So yeah, I kind of felt, okay, I've not quite maybe got the balance right for this. But again, being able to compete in not just the individual event, the relay as well. And for me, again, being the shortest member on the team, I just give it my all for my teammates, and everyone loves a relay. And I love the 200, the 4x2, it was a great experience. And again, that really kind of excited me and, allowed me to enjoy the whole, experience of being at an Olympic Games. Now, for me, for Rio, that kind of brought, I guess, a different sense for me. And for me, I love being able to tell the story. It was quite hard for a period of time being able to tell it, but I kind of enjoy saying it, because for me, it brought my biggest life lesson as well. But being in the call room, you've got like 7 of the other world's best medley swimmers in with you. You've got the previous, Olympic champion, Yeshi Wen. She's looking quite a little bit nervous. She looked like she kind of doesn't want to be there, but at the same time, she's trying to prepare herself for the final. You have Katinka Hosu as well, the Iron Lady, who had a phenomenal transition from 2012 to 2016.
She's had a couple of good swims.
Just the odd one or two. And she has her hood up, and I just remember being like, don't make eye contact, because it felt like if you made eye contact, she was going to kill you. Like, she had the most intense and incredible, like, in the zone stare. So you just avoided eye contact. And again, you're very aware of her presence. Like, she made it known that she was in the zone and she was going to go for this. Also, you had Maria Belmonte, who had a phenomenal games in 2012, medals in the 200 flying, the 800 free. So she's a very tough endurance-based swimmer. And then you've got Maya Dorado and Elizabeth Beisel. And no disrespect, but you could hear them before you could see them, and it was lovely because they were just enjoying each other's company, and just that sort of, for me, I feel it's like the typical American calmness, even though it sounds really like hyper and energetic. But for me, it was quite refreshing because they were just in it together and supporting one another. And it was fab because you didn't need to know where they were. You just knew that their presence was made there, which was really cool. And then my fellow teammates, Amy Wilmot as well, was looking really cool, calm and collected. And then you hear, women's 400 IM final, please step forward. So we come forward and we line up, and then you get paraded out, lane 8, lane 1, lane 7, lane 2. And as you walk out, the thing that struck me almost took me back to 2008, and it was the size of the pool, because the pool was just crystal clear blue. Didn't care about the sort of 360 seating all the way around. It was just the pool and then my lane, almost like curtains had come down either side of the lane. Apologies, the dog's squeaking a toy there. And it was just, for me, I was just so much, I just want to get, sorry, Mrs. Shush. And it was just a matter of trying to just enjoy that moment. For me, my image, if I was to think back to it, it is just that sort of memory of the pool, that clear water, crystal clear blue, and that's it. Everywhere else is black. It's just the pool that was lit up for me. Then you get the 3 whistles, and you go through your little pre-race routine. Every swimmer's got their little race superstition that they do. For me, it was rubbing my hands and feet on the block and cracking my neck to the left. Always did that. That for me was kind of like my thing. And the whistle blew a couple of times, stand on the block, and then it just goes deathly silent. Then you get take your marks, buzzer goes, and for 350 meters of that race, haven't a clue what happened. It happened. But I remember the last 50 meters so clearly, and I remember turning, thinking, "Oh, thank God, there's only one length to go." It's a 400 IM. You're dying on that last 50 meters. Everything's hurting. You've worked every muscle possible, and your lungs are on fire. And I remember being like, "Right, Hosu, I know she's out in front. She's got this in the bag." I was like, I'm sure I've seen somebody, and it was Maya Dorado on the outside. I was like, I'm pretty sure she's out there too. And I don't do a Chad Leclos and I stop and look around but you kind of want to have a rough idea coming down the closing stages where you are, and it's like, I haven't seen anybody else, but that's not to say someone in the outside lanes might have absolutely legged it like Kirsty Coventry did in 2008. And I remember coming up to 25 meters, and all of a sudden I feel like the presence of another swimmer right next to me, and it's Maria. 15 meters to go, I decide I'm not going to breathe, going to just hang on in there and literally reach for the wall as long as my little arms could reach towards the final closing stages. And Maria had come level with me. We hit the wall, and I just remember finishing and being like, oh, thank God that's finished. Okay, that's how you normally feel at the end of a 400 IM. And I turn around and I look at the scoreboard, and when I saw the scoreboard, I just saw my time. And for me, 4 minutes 32 was the fastest I'd ever gone out of the 3 Olympics that I've done. Faster than Beijing, faster than London, fastest I'd ever done in a final at an Olympics. Yeah, it was about maybe 0.6 off of my personal best time. But for me, it was like, I just felt so happy swimming at, 11 o'clock midnight in the evening to do that time. For me, just felt really, really happy. And then I saw the scoreboard shuffle, and I noticed the number 4 next to my name. And I realized that I just missed an Olympic medal by 0.15 of a second. And I realized it was Maria that had just hit me, like she just nailed her finish better than I did. And I'd gone from being super happy, super proud and elated of, my race and how I achieved it, to then just being absolutely devastated because I felt I needed that Olympic medal to solidify myself as a good swimmer. And for a long time, it really haunted me because I was so conflicted with how I should feel. I was like, should I feel happy? Because, I am really proud of that swim. It's the best swim I could have done. And no matter how many different ways I thought of if I swam it, it wouldn't have ended up with that result. I would have been slower, or I would have, not been in that position. Any of the ways that I tried to think of how I'd swam it wouldn't have landed me up in that medal area. That was the best swim I possibly could have done at that time. But the expectation of going around the media zone of people just being like, oh, I'm so sorry, and just feeling sorry for me. And I was like, Please don't feel sorry for me. That just makes me feel so much worse. Um, and yeah, for a while I struggled feeling that I needed this Olympic medal, this sort of, materialistic item to validate myself as being a good athlete. And it took a while to kind of come to terms with it. But actually, it was probably one of the best bits for me because fourth in the world's not bad. If I kind of put it into perspective, it's pretty good. So, yes, the podium would have been fantastic, but there were so many things about the race itself that were really good for me. To be at the age of 27 and still going 4 minutes 32, I was like, I can be a bit kinder to myself. That's all right. And also, I've had up until that point, 15 years worth of, racing top level and, kind of being up there and amongst sort of, the top 10 in the world for, I think something like 10 years. So, I kind of knew that I am a good swimmer. I don't need the medal all the time to prove it. Yes, it's handy to have and nice to showcase, but I'm more than the medal. And success for me is more than just what the scoreboard says. So it was very much a holistic view, and I actually enjoyed the Rio Olympic Games more so than what I did for London and Beijing, because it was a lot of learning and reflecting for me after that. But yeah, just being in the Olympic final just felt, from going from the rabbit caught in headlights to now being like, I know what I'm doing now. It's kind of a nice little transition and realizing that it's just another race, just a couple more people are watching. And you're up against the best in the world, and it's it's quite cool. And a lot of these people that you're up against, I've raced against at world championships, world short course championships, and I've become really good friends. And for that, I hugely cherish and really appreciate. And it's because of those swimmers that push you to the level that you get to. So it's been an incredible experience being able to swim at 3 Olympics, and for me, I feel very honored. Not many can say they've been to 3 Olympics, raced the same event, and go into 3 Olympic finals. So it was like 6th, 5th, and 4th. So yeah.
I think that's a good mindset to have of it's just a pool. It's not anything crazy. It's just a pool.
Yeah.
I want to go back to London 2012 because it's very rare that during an athlete's international career that you get to compete at a home Olympic Games. So I'm curious, like, what was the pressure like in the build-up to the games, and then what was it like amongst the entirety of Team GB, like as a whole, within the London Aquatic Center? Bless you.
Excuse me, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, so I guess being up in Scotland, I was very lucky in that we knew about the Olympics, but being so far away was quite nice because you could kind of hide a little bit. Being in Scotland, they're kind of like, it's in England, it's fine. We'll deal with that. So like you knew it was happening. It was on the news. You could see it in the newspapers. But one of the advantages, I guess, of being up in Scotland is that you weren't literally faced with it as soon as you came out the door. Like you were aware it was there. Like British Swimming didn't let you forget about it. Everything was building up for that moment. Wasn't until we got on the plane and headed down to London that you realised actually how ready London was, because there were billboards. It was all over the splash front covers of the newspaper, the news, the signposts, like every little thing that they could to remind you that the Olympics were coming. It was there in your face, ready. And it was a little bit overwhelming to start with, because I think the reality then sets in of being like, oh God, okay, yeah, right, this is happening. Yep, this is the home Olympics. This is what I've been supposedly gunning myself for and getting myself ready for. And it was and it was pretty surreal actually, but it was quite nice because again, it was, as I said before, it's that fine balance of getting excited and appreciating that people are there to support and get excited about sport and wanting to leave that legacy, and you want to be involved in hopefully leaving a legacy for the next wave of athletes coming through and wanting to get involved in swimming and getting involved in any Olympic sport, and be kind of part of that whole Olympic movement. So it's there is a fair amount of pressure, and probably more so because it is an Olympic Games. You've got that expectation, and also you deal with media that potentially might have been pulled from other areas and they're not sport related. So for them, their mindset is, well, if you win a medal, you're great. If you not win a medal, you're rubbish. It was very black and white in that sort of sense. So you're kind of conscious that some of the questions that you get asked in, like press releases and all that jazz, the expectation is, oh, you made the Olympic team, you're going to win a medal. And it's like, I wish it was as easy as that. But, trying to battle and balance that. And it was kind of the first time that you then suddenly realize actually the pressures from like social media. Because in Beijing, Facebook was a thing. Twitter didn't know how to really work it. And, it wasn't really that kind of sort of a big deal. Whereas London was kind of the first time I realized that it was a big deal. And one of the craziest things was my name. So many people, and again, I do apologize, a lot of them were Americans, got so confused with my name, thinking it was a comeback for Hannah Montana Miley Cyrus. I gained so many followers for probably all the wrong reasons. Because the amount of times I got tagged in little videos of being like, oh, watch my video, what do you think? And it's like at Selena Gomez, at Justin Bieber, and then me. And I'm like,
people thought Hannah Montana had changed to a career as a swimmer.
Yeah, very much so. And I think as well there was a track athlete called Regina George, so everybody was getting really confused. And it was great. It was quite funny, actually. I found it quite amusing. And of course the usual, oh my God, you're Hannah Miley. Do you get the best of both worlds? Like, I've not heard that before. But it's funny. For me, I found it really, really funny. But yeah, it just kind of brought in a whole different world for me. And there was a fair amount of pressure, a lot of expectation, and especially off the back of Beijing, because we had Rebecca Adlington, who, had that phenomenal double gold medal. We had Joe Jackson with the bronze medal. Also our open water swimmers, David Davis, Kerry-Ann Payne, Cassie Patton. It was a really good summer for us. We brought back a lot of medals. So the expectation is, oh, you guys are going to just do the same again. So, being able to deal with that and trying to balance and manage it. And, it was tough. It was very, very tough. And you could have all the training in the world, but ultimately it came down to how much you expose yourself. So before the Olympics started, I actually deleted, I kept my accounts, gave username and password to my management company, but I deleted the social media apps because I was like, I don't want to get tagged in on a really mean comment. Or you can have 100 positive comments and all it takes is for one really nasty one, and you just focus in on that one. So I was trying to protect my mindset as best I can. And it's hard because you can't hide or escape the fact that it was the Olympics and the expectation was you've got to bring back a medal. So trying to protect yourself was tough, but it stood me in good stead because I then competed at the Commonwealth Games, which I guess is like the equivalent of Pan Pacs.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal for Team Scotland because I got to represent Team Scotland, and with it being in Glasgow, that was also, another big home games for me. I could use my experience from London to help me cope and manage with Glasgow a bit better as well. So, yeah, it was interesting and, a great honor and a great experience of being able to represent my country. But, it came at a cost of the pressure, and the expectation also were pretty high.
I think similarly in the U.S., there's a lot of pressure put on. If you don't win a gold medal, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I most specifically remember last summer Lily King winning I think it was silver in the 200 breaststroke, and she broke 220, and it was an amazing swim, and people are like, oh, but she didn't win gold. I'm like,
yeah,
but the person who won gold broke the world record.
Yeah, it is, and that's what Rio taught me about. It was, what is success? Yeah. What defines success? For some people, it's the color of the medal. For some people, it's the time that you go, and for others, it's being there with the tracksuit on. It's, standing on the block at an Olympic Games. Everyone's got their own version of success. And it's really hard when your version of success doesn't match what the expectations of everybody else, because they don't know your situation. And like you say, it took a world record to beat Lily King. Yeah. And, that is a phenomenal swim, but that's not to say her swim is any less impressive. But it's a shame that, people view your performance based on what color medal you bring back. And it's hard. And I understand why, and see a lot of athletes at the end of the games, you hit what you call the post-Olympic blues, because it's, trying to cope with not just your own expectations, but the expectations of others. And it's easy enough for people to say, yeah, just ignore them, it's fine, they don't matter. But you care about what you do, you're passionate about what you do, and there's a part of you that does it not just for yourself, but you do it for your country. And if you feel your country aren't happy with you, it's very hard to not take it personally.
So I'm curious, because you mentioned the Commonwealth Games, and I'm pretty sure I'm one of the 5 people in the US who pays attention to Commonwealth Games and European Championships. I don't know of anybody who does. But I'm curious if you can talk about if there's any differences, if there is, between Commonwealth Games and European Championships to say World Championships and the Olympics. Is there a different level of pride that goes into smaller is the wrong word, but it's the best one that I can think of, smaller country-wise, but more focused on specific parts of the world, I guess?
Yeah, so we've got, for the Commonwealth Games, our main rivals will be those from Australia, Canada, and South Africa, and then Wales and Scotland. So as GB, we get broken down into our smaller nations, and Northern Ireland as well. So you kind of have a bit more chance for maybe athletes who are maybe not quite going to make the Olympic team, but still want to be able to make an international team. The Commonwealth Games, I guess, is the next best thing, because we get to take 3 per nation. Same with when you go to European Championships, you can take I think you can take 4 per nation, but only 2 can progress from heats into finals. So again, it kind of raises that standard that you can't hold back and think, I'll just cruise this, because if you've got a new member on the team who's like, this is my heat, this is therefore my final, because I might not make it back, they might nail it and then beat you, and you're like, oh crap, I'm third. I'm not coming back for the final. So for the Commonwealth Games, if you've got 3 that make it into the final, all 3 get to swim. So you can get, usually, what happened in Birmingham recently, you get a lot of Australian 1, 2, 3s. And it does highlight a lot of depths, but also it does highlight a lot of weak areas in, where we've got strengths and weaknesses in sort of Commonwealth. But for me, it's being Scottish, there's something really prideful that kind of just resonates with you. Again, for me, it hits that core value of just being that little bit different. We've got our kilts. The last night of the racing, we all wear our kilts. The boys and the girls put our kilts on and we parade out for the relays, individual finals. And, it's a bright multicolored skirt. No other team has it. And same with, our national anthem, Flower of Scotland. Yeah, I've got a video of Ross Murdoch when Duncan Scott was singing, I think we won the 200 freestyle, legging it from the swim down pool, and you could hear him, and he was at the other end of the pool because he was that passionate and proud to sing Flower of Scotland. And we always talk about it from a Team Scotland perspective as, what does it mean to be part of Team Scotland? And words like clan, family, pride, honour, all of them come up time and time again. And a lot of people, it's not just about going in to compete, it's going in to compete this small wee nation, because, when people say Great Britain, everyone thinks England. It's like, oh, what part of England are you from? I'm like, no, I'm in Scotland. We always kind of get overlooked a little bit. So it's a chance for us to shine. And, and again, we are a small nation, and there's not many of us that get the chance to be on British teams. Because for us, number-wise, we are just that little bit smaller, but we fight. We're very good at being the underdog and, be the last man standing and kind of, powering through. So there's, the Braveheart effect of you get laldy, you give it all or nothing. So for me, I love the Commonwealth Games because that pretty much kick-started my love and want for my career to kick off, because it was back in 2006. I was just before my 16th birthday. I was racing in Melbourne, and I came 4th, my very first 4th at Commonwealth Games. And 8 weeks before that, I was actually in hospital quite poorly. I think I lost 8 kilos as well. So for me, I didn't know how I was going to perform, but just the whole experience, because you're in a village similar to the Olympics, but it's just a smaller version. You can watch whenever any of the Kiwi athletes had won a medal, you can guarantee that at a set time they'll do the haka outside their block. You're going into a food hall that's open 24/7, and all those little bits. I thought, I love this. This is great. You know what? I want to take it to the next level and actually do it at the Olympic level. So it was, a really nice introduction for me to experience of, yeah, I like this. I want it. I want to go for the next level up. So yeah, that kind of for me was a Kickstarter. Now, when you go to European Championships, it's really difficult to kind of match, I guess, the standard and the level, because there's, I guess, more nationalities across Europe, and there's probably a more depth because you've got 4 per nation rather than 3 per nation. And I think the depth is probably there's going to be more people, so it might be a little bit harder to make finals, but it depends on the event. It really, really does depend on the event. Like for me, the 400 IM in the Commonwealth is not as strong as it used to be. So being able to make a final, is relatively comfortable. Trying to make a final for Europeans is a little bit harder because you've got more athletes across Europe. But each Olympic cycle, it changes, depends on the athletes that stay on, depends on the athletes that are coming through and retiring. It all comes down to, who's still kicking about. But yeah, for me as well, I won my first senior international medal for Team GB at the European Championships in 2010. I broke the European record and I beat Katinka Hossu for the very first time as well. So, it was, for me, that was a really kind of like proud moment. And to sing the national anthem on the podium as well was, pretty special for me too. So yeah, there is a little bit of a difference for that. And it's just more opportunities for us to race. We kind of bring ourselves into like the different size countries that we have, and it's just more opportunities.
I think that's a really great way to put it, that it gives more athletes more opportunities. And we don't really have anything like that in the U.S. We've got like Pan-Pacific Championships, Pan-American Games, but there's no real focus put on them. Like, I love watching how other countries focus on Commonwealth Games and European Championships and celebrate the athletes that go there. And meanwhile, in the U.S., I guarantee you probably most swimming fans don't know that there's a Pan-American Games.
Yeah. Yeah, each country does it differently, and as I say, the view on it is very, very different. For us, swimming is only ever seen once every 4 years at an Olympic Games. Commonwealth Games in Scotland, for us is quite a big deal. It's, our kind of Australian version of it being a national sport in that sort of sense for the Commonwealth Games. Out with that, no, it's football. But yeah, it's interesting to see different nationalities that, have different views, because like the current World Championships, a lot of athletes opted to bypass the World Championships in favor of the Commonwealths. And sometimes that can be down to governing bodies saying, well, our funding distribution is going to be Commonwealth Games. We're going to put more focus on that because we can win more medals there, or we can put more of a focus on that so that, and a lot of athletes will maybe like, well, I want to keep my funding, so I'm going to focus on that meet. And then the World Championships become secondary. So yeah, you can get a little clash every now and then.
Yeah. So I wanna go back in time a little bit to 2009 when there was some new swimsuits on the block, and it's interesting for me because it's rare that I get to talk to somebody about this who was there and who experienced it. I guess some people call them super suits. Mm-hmm. The polyurethane suits, they like just completely demolished the world record books.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about the effects that those suits had on both swimmers individually and on races as a whole? And how would you feel if they'd stuck around after 2009?
Yeah, so they did make an impact, and I did feel the bigger the athlete as well, the more it helped, because it's mass and momentum, and that compression that the suits gave you, it improved your hydrodynamicness, and it just kept you tucked in. So an athlete like myself who wasn't as big, it just didn't benefit as much, because I pride myself in being able to float quite high in the water. Those suits really help lift you up, but almost to the point where it's probably lifting me too high in the water. But the one thing that it did help me with was my breaststroke, because up until that point, my breaststroke was terrible. So it did help fix that for me, which was great. But we actually ended up doing a little bit of a study. So my dad, fun fact, my dad developed a device called an aquapacer, which I think Sydney Olympic Games, 1 in 3 Olympic gold medalists actually used his device. And from there, Finnis took his idea and ran with it, and they got the tempo trainer from it. So if anybody wears, an aquatic metronome,
I've got one in my room.
It's my dad that pretty much started that
That's
off.
awesome.
Yeah, so he has a great mindset for swimming, and his analysis around it is incredible. So he was convinced that it was all to do with the suit changing your physiology and your sort of presence in the water. So we did a little step test where we did a series of 200 meters with the aquapacer in, basically programmed to hit the exact same stroke rate, the exact pacing that you needed to do. And then we would take lactates and heart rate after each repetition. And by the end of it, it was something like my lactate had got up to maybe something like 9.5. Sorry. She's like, pay attention to me. 9.5. Now, I don't produce a lot of lactic acid because I don't have a lot of muscle on me. But it was like 9.5. Heart rate was something like 193. Repeated the set again, but without the polysuit on. Sorry, no, that was without the polysuit. Put the polysuit on, and my lactate was something like 2, and my heart rate was something like 145. And I was going the exact same stroke rate, the exact same pace. So yeah, it made a difference physiologically to you, and we found that it delayed almost the production of lactic acid, which was why so many people were able to finish so quick, because it just didn't hurt as much at the end of the race. But they were a pain in the arse to put on. It took over an hour sometimes to put them on. And if you were sweating, which, in Rome, 2009, in the middle of summer,
it was a little bit hot.
It was just a smidge hot. And yeah, you have to stand in front of a fan being like, don't sweat, trying to get it on as quickly as you can. And then if you felt yourself sweating, it was like, I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to have to cool down and try and get a towel to dab your skin to make sure your skin wasn't wet. But yeah, it was crazy. And I think had the suit stayed on, yeah, we probably would have gotten to the point where it would have just been ridiculous. It wouldn't have been about what training that you'd done. It was about what suit you were wearing. Because I remember as well, there was always this thing with the guys, at the end of the race when they got out, they would always unzip their teammates or their sort of who they were racing against. And then they would wiggle it down as close, as far down as they were able to without, completely exposing themselves. Yeah. It was always parading around. But there were some swimmers that were able to get away with being just a little bit more kind of non-athletic looking. And it was always incredible because you always thought they were just held in so well with these suits. And then obviously once they zipped off and all that, you're like, huh, okay. And that's not to say that they weren't, training as hard, but it definitely was really interesting to kind of see the sort of shape and type of athletes it was helpful and beneficial for. So yeah, 43 world records at one world championships. I think it kind of did prove that they were slightly cheating. It was crazy. It got to the point where if you didn't break a world record, it was like, what was that? That was slow. So it was madness, but it was good because in some sense when they left and and then Ryan Lochte in 2011 broke the first world record, it kind of proven, right, okay, so physiologically we can get down to those times and it is capable, but we just have to be smarter with the way that we train and technique wise as well. So yeah, they definitely were an interesting period of time. And a couple of my personal best times were from the 2009 polysuit era, and it was very difficult for me to maybe get down. I got very close to them quite a few times. But yeah, it's a piece of history, I guess. And it's funny because I was just going through, moved house, found all of my polysuits. I have no idea what to do with them. I don't want to throw them away, but at the same time, they're kind of useless.
Yeah.
So yes, if anyone knows of what to do with them, let me know.
I feel like it'd be almost interesting to use it for training.
Yeah, it'd be really helpful.
And just try to recreate the body position while wearing it when you don't have it on.
Yeah, exactly.
I always think about how Ian Thorpe would still be the world record holder in the 400 freestyle if those suits didn't exist. Some of those times would have stuck around for so much longer. So couple more questions for you, and then we'll wrap things up.
No worries.
I'm curious because I've heard a lot from athletes in the U.S. about what the pandemic did to their training plans, to their lives, but I've never heard about it from somebody outside of the United States. So I'm curious on both the swimming side of things and the just general life side of things. what COVID did for you and how it just disrupted your daily flow of your life.
Yeah, it was brutal. So sadly, we're not in a country where we can have swimming pools and back gardens because wintertime, it's freezing. You just don't outdoors. So when in March we had our first lockdown, I was actually really, really struggling with my shoulder at the time. So I kind of saw it as a bit of an opportunity of being like, right, okay, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe I'm going to get a chance to rest my shoulder a little bit more. And you know, and I was panicking a little bit because, you know, the Olympic trials are still going ahead, or they've been slightly delayed. Are the Olympics going ahead? And all of a sudden we can't train. Now, for me, it was literally, you know, I had the main pool to train in, and that was it. There's no, you know, little home pools or anything like that I could have used. So I actually ended up borrowing a wetsuit to try and swim in the sea. So I live very much on the coast of Scotland, in Aberdeen, and the North Sea is pretty much there. And I don't know if anybody ever swam in the North Sea, but in March, the water temperature, I actually need to find out what it is in Fahrenheit, but in Celsius, it's about 3 degrees.
Oh, wow. That's very cold. I think that's like a little, like right under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I think.
Yeah, so I had like the wetsuit boots, the actual wetsuit, the gloves, the balaclava, and I was training myself to, you know, condition to, you can't just jump straight in because you just go into shock.
Yeah.
So it's like gradually building yourself up. So the horrible thing of, you know, trying to let a little bit of water into your suit, let that heat up, let a little bit in, try and get a little bit lower. And I got to about my neck and I was like, I can't put my head in. I can't do it. So I was like doing granny breaststroke thinking, yeah, this is not going to work. And I lasted all of 7 minutes, and then I came out and took my gloves off, and I was like, I can't get my suit off. Like my whole body was just numb. So I thought, this isn't good. So some athletes were actually buying paddling pools, like little paddling pools to just put in their back garden, attaching bungee cords to their house, and then actually swimming in wetsuits in the paddling pools. The issue obviously with that was that the water temperature was just very, very cold. And it's incredibly boring swimming tethered because you're not you know, you're swimming being like, how far have I swam? Don't know.
I've got a picture of me in my backyard with bungee cords attached to chairs and my face in like a bucket of water. Like, so I definitely feel that experience.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, it really brought out a lot of people's thinking outside the box. So, you know, it was like, okay, well, it's pretty much the same across the nation. It probably wasn't the same across the world, but across the nation, no one could get access to the pool. So when things started getting a little bit warmer, I then started venturing into doing open water swimming a little bit more. There was a couple of lochs and a couple of lakes nearby, but obviously being mindful of, you know, being safe in open water because water temperature, you know, was getting up to about maybe 13 degrees, which is for me is my limit. Like I need lower than 13 degrees, I found. And, you know, once you start swimming, you warm up and it's actually not too bad. But, you know, you can't go open water swimming after a really heavy day of rain because whatever's been sprayed on fields or just sewage can just come straight into wherever you're swimming. So it can be really dangerous health-wise. So you can't swim off the back of, you know, heavy rainfall. And then if you have a couple of dry spells, the water level might be too low. So there's little things like that that I was completely oblivious to that I, you know, found was really, really fascinating. But kind of going back to what was happening with my shoulder, I was finding that it was subluxating. So it was like partially popping out of its socket. And we were doing... Yeah, not so good. Like if I tried to drive anywhere or put on a jacket, it would just pop out. And I thought, yeah, something's not right here. It should not be doing that. And I was able to get it scanned, but found that apparently the scan was fine. I have really healthy shoulders, but I was like, yeah, no, something's really not right. You know, it should not be doing this. I'm in a lot of pain. I've been strengthening it or trying to strengthen it for the last like 5-6 years, and it just doesn't seem to have improved. And it's like the amount of work I've done to try and strengthen it with no improvement surely should be a sign that something structurally is not right. And, the sort of like different levels of lockdown that we were going through, my partner and I were pretty much holed up in our top floor flat in Aberdeen. So there was no way I could hire or get a paddling pool because I didn't have a garden. We'd not long actually got our dog, Poppy, and she actually was the best thing that could have happened to us because we were only allowed one walk a day. So she basically forced us out the flat to have that walk. And that was actually incredible. It really, really helped us because it stopped us going completely stir crazy. I then started doing trick training with her and doing lots of different tricks. Taught her to pack my swimming bag, as you do. Taught her to like fetch blankets because if I got cold on the sofa, she could go and get it for me without me having to move. So I was basically just teaching my dog to be my servant. It's not good. A lot of fun. And she loved it, and I really appreciated actually, and I learned a lot through her, like self-reflection wise, because there was a lot of things that I was teaching her and trying to communicate with her because dogs can't speak English. You have to learn that level of communication, but also, she has to enjoy what she does. And I thought, you've got to set her up, set the situation up that she's successful, not necessarily getting it right all the time, but if she doesn't get it right, she comes back and tries again. And I had like a little epiphany with myself and my career thinking, how often did I actually set myself up as an athlete for success? How often did I set myself up, right, that's not gone well. I'm going to come back because I still really enjoyed it. Yeah, there was times where I did do that, but there were times where I'm just like, no, really didn't like that. That wasn't good. Oh dear, I'd never want to do that again, sort of thing. And just being a bit kinder to myself as well, because if she didn't do it right, I can't shout at her because she has no idea what I'm saying. If you've got a dog and you're just like, oh, you're so naughty, that's awful, that's terrible, she'll sit there and wag her tail. And so she go, yeah, have I done something well? Yeah. So like, your tone of voice, because she hasn't a clue what you're saying. Like the concept of words is just non-existent to them. So it was really interesting and quite fascinating, and it helped me an awful lot. Also, trying to use weights was really difficult because I didn't have any space to have like lifting platforms or anything like that in my flat. Because I think if I did, my neighbor underneath us would have, had some words to say. So I was using Poppy. She was a puppy and she was getting bigger. So she started off at like 8 kilos, and by the end of lockdown, she was 14 kilos. So doing squats with her on my back, trying to do sit-ups with her, and just fun little stuff. And for me, the key thing was fun. But I tried to reach out to a lot of other athletes via Zoom because I thought, well, if I'm really struggling mentally here, there's a lot of athletes out there that are going to be maybe a lot worse position than I am. So I tried to make myself available for question and answer sessions. I teach Pilates, so I did like a lot of online Pilates sessions. I also started working with Fitter Women and along with Alison Schmidt around female health and trying to educate more athletes around that. So I'm really trying to make myself busy and feel like I was helping the sort of sporting community as much as I could, because everything had just come to a standstill. My partner, keep saying my partner, he's now my husband. We've been married like 2 weeks. I keep forgetting. He lost all of his work as well. So he walked into a local supermarket, which we call Tesco's, which is like, I guess your equivalent to like Walmart. And he was just like, are you hiring? So he became, a basically on the floor produce stacker, basically. And he's like, his mum always told him, make sure you get a good degree, get your master's, because, you don't want to be stacking shelves at Tesco's. And he's like, here I am with a master's degree, stacking shelves at Tesco. And he's like, something's not right here. But it gave him a greater appreciation for working those types of jobs because it was hard. It wasn't enjoyable. He was treated terribly because, he's seen as like, substandard person. It really kind of opened his eyes a lot to it. So, he's a bit more mindful when you do see shop floor staff and shop managers and stuff, just be a bit kinder to them because that might be the best thing that they've had all day. But yeah, it was tough. And the hardest bit for me was not being able to visit like grandparents and not being able to, go and see my mom and dad because they're classed as a separate household and lived further away. And my husband, he also went through his dad needing a bone marrow transplant, and he became the stem cell donor. So he was having to basically put himself through all the growth hormones to donate his stem cells to save his dad's life. So it was really, really tough. But we as a community and as a nation, we did try to come together the NHS, our National Health Service. My mum she works in palliative care, so she got no time off during COVID, and for her it was the busiest time because she works with those that are needing to be comfortable for the sort of like last couple of years of their life. And she was working so hard and having to always come home with, like, my dad would put fresh clothes out for her outside the front door, and she would have to change before she got in, have a shower, and stay apart from my dad for quite a fair bit. And it was just really, really challenging. So every Thursday night we would always clap, like, even the block of flats that we were in, people would ring bells, tap like saucepans, and it might not seem like much, and it is, it's like we're just clapping, but I think it brought the community together because it was a sign of we appreciate for those who were still having to work through this incredibly difficult time. And yeah, it's just, I can't summarize it any shorter. It was just brutal. Mental health wise, it's been really, really tough. And actually seeing a lot of, especially young kids, like learning to swim, some kids that were, just getting ready to start their lessons, had that 2-3 years of not being in them, now have a real big fear because they've missed that prime time of building their confidence and having to get more confidence. So I am seeing a lot of younger athletes now struggling with their confidence, struggling with coping with stressors and change. So trying to find ways to help them, for me, is like my kind of key driving force and factor, because mental health is, such a big thing now within sport, and it's great that it's talked about. But one of the positives, I guess, from COVID is that it's shown that, like, you're in America, I'm in Scotland.
Yeah.
We can do things online now, which is great, and it's opened up a lot more opportunities, I think, which is fab. But yeah, it's certainly something that I don't want to repeat ever again. But I think a lot of people should be able to pat themselves on the back and show that, what, we actually have become more resilient because of it, because everybody's had to have found a way to get through it. And they should be proud that we are standing here having gone through all of that and learnt from that experience. Because it will have made us a lot more resilient. Everyone had to have thought outside the box. We were doing Zoom workouts online with my squad to try.
My college team was doing that.
Yeah, keep ourselves together. And then I ended up going through shoulder surgery during COVID as well, because they actually found out I had completely split in half my subscapularis tendon. So that was why my shoulder was falling out. So now that it's fixed and it's robust, and and I can swim pain-free now, which was my ultimate aim. But that was a really tough decision because that impacted basically my chance of making my 4th Olympics. And I had to basically decide, did I want to, because I could keep swimming. The guy was like, yeah, you could keep swimming. You've got a bit of a glass ceiling, and I'll fix your shoulder in whatever state you bring it to me in. But he says, it's up to you. You can get it fixed now, or you can wait until after the Olympics is over. And it was a really tough decision because I really wanted to try and, I knew I could make the team, and it was my last chance of being able to make an Olympics. And I thought, not many athletes say they've been to 4 Olympics, but I had to put my future health first. And I was like, I can't keep pushing myself, getting more and more frustrated as my shoulder hurts me more and more. I'm not able to meet the times that I know that I can do because I'm in pain and having to just push through the pain. I was like, I don't want to damage my body any further. So I opted for the surgery, and he said that it would take a year for it to get back to where I need it to be. And I got the surgery done in October 2020, and I knew, October 2021, that passed the Olympics. So for me, I was trying to get back in fit shape in 6 months. And it gave me a target. I kind of thought, at least I'll try and go for my 4th Olympic. It's going to be a long shot, but I've got to give myself sorry, front door. Madness in my household. And yeah, and I'm really happy that I went through that. As tough as it was, and it probably started the process of me winding down my career, it taught me an awful lot, and actually what I'd gone through COVID, and actually reflected back a little bit more. But actually being quite proud of how swimmers as a whole coped with it, because I think out of all sports, anything to do with aquatics, I think we're hit the hardest. Runners, you can go out and run. Cycling, you can get on your bike. But swimmers, the closest thing you could do if you didn't have a paddling pool in the back was lie in your bath. And even then, that's, it's not the same. It really is. And we've found a study that if you miss 3 days of training, it would take you 6 weeks to regain that VO2 max fitness, because it's such an environmental sport. You have to adapt and train your body to be in water and to be okay in water. And your body's a fascinating thing that if you take it out of that environment, it'll then just readapt, because it thinks, oh, we're not in the water, let's readapt to being on land. So, I was worried and watching a lot of training going down the drain as each week went by, and that for me was really, really tough to see, because it was, you spent so long trying to build yourself up to then watch it just literally disappear. And those, the land work helped keep you fit, but you need to be in water. You need to keep that level of feel and that technique level, but you just had to make do with what you had and get on with it. And I think as a whole, watching the Olympics, I think everybody did phenomenally well, like across the board, across all nations. Like, it was incredible to watch and actually to see how impressive these athletes were. Some athletes were able to get a little bit of extra, I guess, benefit of getting in the water earlier, depending if they were on like higher levels of funding. And, that was tough as well, because it did kind of mean that those that were maybe classed as lower tier were the last ones to get back in, which was such a shame to see. But, I guess some form of protocol had to get back in for things to gradually get back into normal in inverted commas, way of living. But yeah, apologies, I've not really answered that succinctly, because it's such a vast area, really.
No, that was great. You're very detailed and very like informative in the way you talk and the things that you say. It's like, it's just, you have very nice answers, is the simplest way of putting.
PG-13 version.
You give good answers. I appreciate that it's clear how much thought you're putting into everything that you're saying. So this one this question I did a little bit of research for.
Okay.
I have no idea what an MBE is, but I know it's cool. So it's not something I've heard about. So tell me about it, because it's obviously like a really big honor that got bestowed upon you.
Yeah, so it's a member of the British Empire.
Okay.
So basically, it's a good question, because I'm not 100% sure. All I know is that you get these extra letters added, and it's a big deal. There's different letters. You got an MBE, you got an OBE, you got a Dame, and you got a Sir. And it's based on, I guess, what you've achieved. So a lot of Olympic medalists get given an MBE or an OBE. OBE is, I guess, a higher tier to an MBE. And I think there's another tier underneath that, but I can't remember what that one's called. But you have to be nominated. You have to put your case forward, and someone normally nominates for you, so you can't put yourself forward. It has to be like somebody else has to nominate you. And I was coming up to the end of my career in swimming, and I kind of thought, you don't do it for the success, and you don't do it for the fame, and in Britain anyway, you certainly don't do it for the money, because for us, you don't earn a lot of money through swimming. I just did it purely because I enjoyed my swimming. But during lockdown, as I said, I did what I could to try and help out the athletes as much as I could. And I didn't realize that someone had put my name forward for it, saying that I'd gone above and beyond, not only representing my country in my sport for 17 plus years, making Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, and sort of multiple finalists and medals. I'd also spent a significant amount of time working with athletes to try and encourage, empower, and work with especially young females, educate around menstrual health to try and retain and protect female sport. And they obviously thought I did a good job and decided to award me this honor of the MBE. So it means that I can now officially put it at the end of my name as, awesome. I guess, like the title. So, a bit like if you get a PhD, you can put PhD at the end of your name, or a BSc or doctor or something like that. So it kind of goes along a little bit like that. So I kind of get a member of the British Empire added.
That's
so
awesome.
I think, so sometime next year I'll get to go down, hopefully either to Holyrood in Edinburgh or Windsor Castle, and I think a royal will present the awards. So yeah, it's quite exciting. Although at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't fully know what it means, but it's celebrating
but
that you've done
cool.
a good job. Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was really quite nice to be recognized, I guess, for the achievements because, again, as I said, that fourth place finish, I felt I needed that medal to actually show that I am a good athlete when actually it's the years of service that I've done for swimming, and not just for myself, but what I've given back to sport too. And for me, that means the world to me, being able to encourage a lot of young swimmers, because I remember hanging over the end of the balcony trying to get an athlete, Graham Smith, one of our best distance freestylers, trying to sign a poster, and he did. And for me, I had that on my wall, and I always remembered that impact for me. So I always made a vow to myself, and also watching Misty Hyman's phenomenal swim in 2000 for a 200 fly. I thought I want to be somebody like her, someone like Graham, someone like Misty, that makes an impact to a younger athlete, to hopefully for them to succeed in what they do and enjoy the journey too. So yeah.
I think it's kind of it's a cool coincidence that you mentioned Misty Hyman, because last weekend I was talking to Caitlin Sandino, and she was in that race, and yes, she told me about it's just an awesome showing of how each generation of athletes helps inspire a new generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the coolest things about swimming, I think, that I can sit down and talk to you and talk to all these athletes that for years I was like, oh my god, this person's really cool. For me personally, I'm just so grateful that I even get to do this. Because I love talking about swimming. Anybody who knows me knows I love talking about swimming. I'm the guy on my team where if people want to know an obscure time in a race, a world record, and in some random event, they come ask. I'll get texts at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful that you've sat down and taken time out of your day. And before we wrap things up, I'm curious, first of all, what have you been doing since retiring from swimming? What are you up to now? And after that, you're welcome to promote anything that you'd like. It can be literally you can just plug your Instagram if you want. It's your time. You can plug whatever you want. So
cool. So since retiring, it's been an interesting journey. I'm trying to figure out who Hannah the person is. I mean, Hannah the person's always been there, but not relying on swimming and actually working on my confidence. Because when I retired, I actually didn't realize how much my confidence plummeted, because I turn up to the pool, I know my routine, I know exactly where I need to do, what I need to be, and everything is pretty much ingrained. And now to not have that same routine I floundered a little bit and kind of found it really, really difficult. So I've been really grateful for the support of my husband and my mom and my dad and a lot of my friends as well, just allowing me to talk through the highs and the lows of this transition. But for me, the one thing I really wanted to do was make an impact and to help future-proof, especially in female sport, and to help, the balance between coaches and athletes. For me, I'd gone through pretty much my whole career being coached by my dad. And I've learned an awful lot from him, especially with his flying and army background. He does a lot of great courses around behavior. And I've found a really nice tie between the menstrual health cycle and behavioral work. So creating workshops through working with athletes and also working with coaches, and being able to kind of educate, empower, and inspire, hopefully, for athletes to use sport to help them, but also for them to identify any potential red flags that they may have, so that you can protect their future health, so that they're not pushing themselves through where they're missing periods, and the stigma behind that being on your period is bad and it's negative, and actually seeing it as a sign of health. And for the coaches as well to understand and read their athletes so that they know the correct way to balance and manage it. So if you've got an athlete who one day has got lots of energy, does really, really well, next day energy plummets, depending on what phase of the cycle that they're in, worst thing you can do is yell and scream at them, and just better manage their communication. So being able to work with different coaches and athletes and across all sports as well, not just purely in swimming. So that's kind of where I'm trying to kind of base my feet, but just keeping myself open, for any opportunities. I do some one-to-one swim clinics. I don't think I'll go into coaching just yet, because I want to try and find out my strengths out with swimming so that I can kind of feel more comfortable in different areas and not always have to rely on swimming. I mean, swimming is my best degree. and that'll always be there, and that's something that I'll always be able to go back to and work on. But I want to be able to springboard myself into other ventures and kind of see where Hannah Miley fits in best. So yeah, and I work on body movement as well. I love Pilates. I love being able to try and work out on different sort of body movements. For me, being, 5'5", always being quite small, I always had to work out on being particular and precise with my body movement, both on land and in the water. And, it took me up until 30 before I got seriously injured. And I owe a lot of that to Pilates. So for me, being able to pass that down to a lot of athletes to hopefully prolong their careers too in sport, it is kind of what I'm working towards. So there's lots of little bits. Also competing in flyball with my dog as well.
Oh, nice.
So for me, that gives me a little bit of the outlet for competitiveness, but dialing it back in a more positive way, because as Poppy that's the athlete, I support her. It's great fun. Gets to be part of a team. It's like a big dog relay race. So really, really enjoy doing that. Done a little bit of commentary work as well. As you can tell, I've got the gift of the gab, so I can waffle and talk about swimming because I love it. So I've really enjoyed doing those little bits. But yeah, trying to kind of, find my journey really, my next chapter. And I put a lot more out onto my social media, like my Instagram. So it's at Smiley8889. So Smiley8889. Again, it's got nothing to do with Hannah Montana or Miley Cyrus. Same as my Twitter as well, because the amount of people that follow me on Twitter, I'm pretty sure half of them are Hannah Montana fans. But yeah, I'm just curious to sort of grow and develop as this next phase of my life, and work out where I fit in the world and how I can help and make an impact. So yeah, so I'm still figuring it out. It's still a transition. I've kind of tried to replace the word retired with transition, because retired sounds very final and like that's it. And for me, it's not it's continuing. It's just taking on a different path and a different look. So it's kind of transitioning onwards to the next chapter. So yeah, that's kind of all I got to say on that.
That's awesome. I mean, it's just so awesome when I hear about athletes like you who finish their time competitively in swimming and then decide that they want to give back. They want to help other people, even outside of the scope of swimming. It's fantastic. This has been awesome. I've taken so much of your time.
Oh, it's okay. Well, as well, I can talk behind legs like a donkey.
I'm so grateful that you took time out of your day for this.